Hey Fembiotics followers, and thanks for tuning in here. So we are revamping our Topic Tuesday, and we are now going to call it Get in the Flow with Fembiotics, flow with the pH, right? Because we're covering all the news and stories related to pH balance and how that relates to your vaginal health. So a lot of things we're going to cover here are going to have to do with that. So if you have any questions relating to vaginal health and how that affects your pH, please put your comments in the description boxes below. Like this video, subscribe to our YouTube channel so that you can get notification every time we post a video. So on the agenda for today, we're going to talk about a latest topic in the news about the newest superbug. So if you haven't heard, or you may have already heard, there was a recent news show that casted about the latest superbug, which was a candida, which is a form of yeast, right? And what happened with this bug is basically a lot of New Yorkers have been getting ill from this bug. Several people have died from it because it's a yeast that cannot be killed by any of the antifungals that we use currently today. So antifungals are commonly that we use for yeast would be diflucan or Flagyl, which is metronidazole, and any of the other azole drugs. So what that means, if that yeast cannot be penetrated by the antifungals, it's going to continue to grow. Yeast is a common part of our microbiome. So it's basically a part of the bacteria, even though it's not a bacteria, it's a yeast, right? That lives in our gut. And so it's a naturally occurring piece of our flora, and what happens is that when our immune systems are compromised and our defenses are down, that overgrows and overtakes our body and becomes this horrible overgrowth of infection, right? So the symptoms that were reported that have been associated with this illness are malaise, which is just general feeling of not feeling well, right? Excessive tiredness, fatigue, weakness, just generalized. You may have a low-grade fever, those kind of things. Nausea, vomiting, very, very general symptoms. So if you are experiencing something such as that and it's been prolonged for longer than 3 days, you're going to want to go to your primary care physician and you're going to want to get that checked out to understand what is causing that infection, because at this current time there's also an outbreak of hepatitis A, which would present with very similar symptoms, and so you'll want to make sure that you go and check that out. So the other thing we have to talk about is resistance to antifungal drugs. So when we talk about resistance, we're talking not just on an antifungal level, we're talking about on an antibiotic level as well, right? Because many times, even if we can't treat fungal infections with a candida antifungal, we may use antibiotics, broad spectrum antibiotics, to try to combat that illness as well. But those have not been working either in this case. And so what that says is that we have what we call a superbug, which is a bug that has become extremely resistant to whatever the antibiotics that we use, meaning we have no tools in our defense box anymore, right? So when it comes to common medical tools that we would use to combat these illnesses, they no longer are effective. And so now we're gonna have to turn to look to other alternatives in order to basically combat these illnesses. And so one of the things that would be a great defense for an overgrowth of a bacteria, right, a negative bacteria, is to give it a positive bacteria and have the positive bacteria outweigh the negative bacteria. And so that is what our vaginal pH support helps to do, is basically to combat overgrowth of yeast, bacteria, and any other, protozoa, whatever other like bugs you can think of on a microscopic level. Probiotics will help to release the beneficial components to fight those infections. And so you guys want to be on the lookout for, those symptoms that we talked about: excessive tiredness, which is fatigue, malaise, low-grade fever, nausea, vomiting, chills, anything like that, excessive diarrhea. All of those things can be associated with a superbug. The last time we had a superbug that was really as detrimental as this, I think MRSA, because a lot of people underestimated MRSA. They also underestimate the flu and how strong that is, and a lot of people have died from that as well. So MRSA is another bacteria that basically is methicillin-resistant Staphylococcus aureus, which we already have Staphylococcus aureus living in our bodies. However, this strain is particularly resistant to the types of antibiotics that you would treat with. So we have to use different antibiotics to treat it. And the same things happen for things such as C. difficile, which is explosive diarrhea. If you've ever had that, it's not fun. And the way we treat it is with antibiotics. However, it developed from the overuse of antibiotics and multiple antibiotic therapy. And so one of the treatments for C. difficile, Clostridium difficile, which is the explosive diarrhea, is to actually give probiotics. And so because you need to replace what was lost by, excreting all of that excess feces and by destroying your gut flora with the antibiotics. And so you'll want to head over to www.fembiotic.com to check out our vaginal pH support and really take a look at those reviews, guys. And I'm, saying this as a faithful user myself, and I've seen the results for myself, but so have our clients. So you want to go ahead and check that out. So in other news, we have some upcoming events, but before I share our upcoming events, I always want to put in a plug that if you have a story about pH balance that you would like to share, and you do not have to be a Fembiotics customer in order to share your story. If you have any story that you'd like to share about your journey with pH balance to a better lifestyle and wellness and what you've experienced as a woman going through these issues, please send over your stories to admin@phembiotic.com. That's admin@fembiotic.com, and we would love to read over your story. We'll publish in our newsletter. We have a monthly newsletter that shares a different woman's story each month, and we can also change your name to make it anonymous so that you don't feel like other people may judge you from your story. But what we are trying to promote is that other women can understand that they're not the only ones struggling with these issues, and these are nothing that we should be ashamed of, but they're normal parts of life, and they're things that we are overcoming. And so shoot your story over to admin@Fembiotic. We'd love to hear from you. Thank you so much in advance for participating, because we've had wonderful participants each month in our newsletter, and we can't say thank you enough for being brave and stepping out and sharing your story, your success story, and how you have been changed by our products. So our upcoming events this month, we have a fashion show by Eminent Boera, which is going to be held at the West Palm Beach, South Florida Fairgrounds. It's going to be Saturday, April 27th from 5 p.m. to 9 p.m. So you'll want to make sure to go ahead and secure your tickets on Eventbrite, because this event is annual and it sells out quick. The fairgrounds is a large space, but she has a lot of people that are going to come. So you'll want to check us out there. We can't wait. We're so excited to share our product with the customers that will be there at the fashion show. And then as well, in May, we will be at the Orlando Beauty Expo. You'll find more details about that in our next newsletter that comes out on May 1st. We'll publish all the details there, but it's going to be a Saturday as well, May 18th from 12:30 to 5:30 in Orlando, Florida. So again, I'll post more details about that in our newsletter, but I want to thank you guys so much for tuning in and then bearing with us while we change our platform a little bit and tailor it more towards the news. So thank you so much for tuning in, for getting the flow with Fembiotics, and have a great day.